7 to me doesn't have necessarily an automatic whether this should be sine or cosine. So which one did you pick?
Chose sine.
You chose sine. Okay, so I want to do it the same way you did to make it a little bit easier. Now, one thing right away that I noticed that doesn't come up in many of these questions, more of the graph is below the x-axis than above the x-axis. So I do know that this graph is going to be shifted down some. But regardless of whether we pick sine or cosine, that doesn't change the amplitude. So amplitude is half the distance between min and max. So that should be a 2. Or a -2 if we decide we want to reflect it over the x-axis. But we need to make it a 2 to make it be the right height. Whether you pick sine or cosine, it's not going to change what the period is. So if we start measuring here, looks like we have to go to here to see a full cycle. So that would be 2 pi. So if the formula is 2 pi over b and the period I want is 2 pi, then b needs to be 1. So b is 1. Of course, that's an understood one. If this goes up to 1 and down to -3, I think I need to shift this guy up 1 so that he'd go up to 2 and down to -2. That would keep it balanced. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. But, and then what I suspect you struggled with the most was how much do you need to shift it right or left?
Oh wait, yeah. I did -1.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We need to go up 1, so his is -1. Yeah, you're correct. I was wrong. Okay, so here's my recommendation when you don't know how much to shift it right or left, because this is by far the hardest part. What I do is I just sketch the couple things that I'm sure about. So I went with sine. So I just sketch in a very quick sine graph. I know the amplitude is 2, so I'm going to quickly make the amplitude change to 2. And of course you can do this on your calculator as well, but I'm for sure that it needs to go down 1. So if I take this point, move it down 1, and this point down 1, and this point down 1, this point down 1, and reconnect them, looks like looks like that. So I erased the previous step, and then the point of that is, now that I've graphed sine, changed the amplitude to be 2, shifted it down 1, now I can take one point on where the graph I'm currently am and compare it to a point that I want it to be. So we could move it a little bit to the right, or we could move it a whole bunch to the left, but now I have a visual of what I want to do. I'm just always going to pick the smaller value just for consistency, but it doesn't really matter. So to go to the right, we want to subtract from x. How much we want to go to the right needs to be c over b. And if this is 2 pi, half of that is 1 pi. So to me this looks like, see, this is at pi over 2, and this looks like it's at 3 pi over 4. So this is half of a block, and half of a block is pi over 4. So I think I want to shift them right pi over 4. Now this doesn't really matter so much for this question, but it gets complicated when b is not 1. If b is 1, how much you want to shift right or left is just going to go in place here. But when b is not 1, it's kind of taxing to do that in your head. So I make, just like I've been modeling this one, set the formula equal to what you want it to be equal to for this problem. We already know what b is from the period, and then that tells you what c needs to be. And then finally, let's graph it. So it had to have an amplitude of 2, it had to have a period of 2 pi. You picked sine, so I think we need to go right pi over 4, and more of the graph was below the x-axis than above, so shifting it all down 1 should fix that. And if I erase all my other work off of there, yeah, that looks good. So that would be one possibility. So, are you okay with how I found this?
Yeah.
Because that's the hardest part. And you're okay with the rest?